everything in rugby is what happens today is based on what happened before us, and so the history of rugby. I know I'm going to go through the whole history of rugby in Virginia, but being with you guys, and I haven't seen a lot of you guys in a long time, and it's been a longer ride for me than the two guys that are here today, the two classy guys that are here today. I had the honor of being asked to introduce David Dean today, who's going to be inducted, and I was the manager for all of his years after he got out of college. So I saw the whole thing start, and I want to say start to finish, but it's not over because he still plays for Virginia Cardinals, and he played last month in Saranac. He's going to play next month in Aspen for two of our old boy sides. So I want to talk a little bit about, though, because I played against the other inductee today, Otis Purvis, and both classy. These guys are getting in, and all the guys that have gotten in so far are not only classy guys on the pitch, off the pitch too. And it's just it's pretty neat that we have guys who are just classy guys both on and off. I can remember, and I hope I don't put you guys to sleep. My first rugby match, I lived with a guy named Hal Hamburg and a guy named Rick Mayo from Norfolk, and you Norfolk guys probably remember those guys. And they brought me up here and we played Richmond. It was my first match. It was 1972, and of course I didn't know much about the laws because we have a game that doesn't have rules. It's called laws. And so anyway, I held on to the ball and I didn't let go, and I got stepped on a few times. And after it was over, I said, "Who's this fat guy who stepped on me?" Asking my players. "Oh, that's Rotten Ralph." I'm going, "Rotten Ralph." Well, anyway, they have a guy named Ralph.
Fat Ralph.
Well, I said, "Who's that fat guy?" Right? And so he turns out he's got Virginia powerlifting records, right? And he became a judge later on, and
he was a very powerful judge.
Right, and so
Ralph Robertson.
Ralph Robertson was his name, and that was my introduction to rugby. Getting stepped on by rotten fat Ralph. Okay, so and then I think Tommy Valentine may have been on that team, and
yep.
And maybe Monk Vaughn.
Yep.
And so anyway, that was my introduction. So later, that was Norfolk Irish at the time. So with Hal and Rick, and then I played a while for then I came up to I finished law school in North Carolina. We had guys that, remember, the big powerhouses in Norfolk in Virginia were Norfolk had their guys, Roanoke had their guys, and I played against Clarence Culpepper and Steve Bartley there. And then Richmond, of course, had Richmond and James River. And so that was the three powerhouse places. I played for the North Carolina Selects, and we played Virginia Selects, and they crushed us in 1976. Probably some of the guys here today played in that match. And so I went up to Northern Virginia, and I became a charter member of the Northern Virginia RFC. And so what happened is we suffered, Virginia suffered, and I call it Virginia Rugby, and that's anybody from Virginia. Of course, the VRU is no longer around, and of course neither is the PRU, but we suffered from what's called West Coast bias, and even if our guys were as good as the other guys, we got overlooked. If it was even, they always picked the West Coast guy, and it used to burn us up, and probably David's biggest disappointment, he didn't tell me this, and I didn't have to ask him, but he has two big disappointments. I mean, that at least that I call, and one is he missed being selected he was an alternate on the '93 World Cup team, World Cup Sevens, and I helped run that camp, but I was not a selector, and they picked the West Coast guy in place of him, and I don't even want to mention his name, but it was not his fault, but I just was so upset about that, and he should have started on that team and did not. And that was because of this West Coast bias I'm talking about. And then his other disappointment was 99 club championships in Conshohocken in sevens when our club lost in the final to a team that we could easily beat with 6 guys. And it's one of those. Well, we did beat them with 6 guys the next year.
Who was that? Philly?
Philly, yeah. And it's just unfortunate, but you know me how I always bring up the bright side of everything, right? But that's a too big. But he's got many other things to cheer about.
We're all cheered up.
Yeah, I guess I bummed out the whole day already. So David, get back to that West Coast bias. Because well, first of all, when Otis played, there was no national championship, so there was no way to measure. Norfolk had that great run in 15s when it went out to Denver. They made a mark with themselves in 15s during that period, but sevens we never could. No one could ever know how good we were, and And then in 1985 they finally started the national championship, and we went out to Arizona, and lost in the final round back. And of course they had all Eagles. They had Steve Gray, they had Brian Vizard, they had Lynn Walton, they had everybody, right? And we lost in the final to them in '85. So they had to pay attention to us then. And then 2 years later we went out, we won it. Duck Brothers, right? 1987, we were national champions in sevens. Then they couldn't ignore us any longer. Right? Then we're playing on equal terms. I mean, we're playing the same matches. There's something at stake. There's a title, and sure enough, we won it. So after that, and unfortunately, Otis had just retired before then, and never got the chance to, that type of chance, because the team he played on was the best team in the country when he played on it. So after that, then that sets the stage now for David, because David came to our club, graduated from Mary Washington in 1987, and then came up to Northern Virginia and the next year in '88. Got hurt. He always had a nagging shoulder injury, and it just kept him from playing a long time in a row. And he'd get hurt during these matches. We didn't know the shoulder looked. He had one in and one out, and he looked. It was horrible. And I remember Lake Taylor High School. It was just terrible. We had a hospital, and so. But he came in '88. He got hurt. He couldn't play. We went to Milwaukee for the Nationals. Then in '89 we played Mob in the finals in the national championship. We lost, but that's what David stepped into this team that was already pretty good, and from that time on, '89 on, the next 10 years we were 1, 2, or 3 in the country in sevens, and so we started. I hate to use the word dynasty, so I won't use it, but it's something like that. We were just pretty darn good for a long period of time.
You must mean dynasty.
that too, right?
Like that, but not that.
Yeah, something like that, but not that. So he and during that run, we just had a good team, and we kept it going for a long time, and we had a tradition. We still have a tradition, but David was a major part of that, and of course, not to mention about the 8 or 10 times we won Cape Fear, and of course David was on every one of those teams for the '90s, and so during the course of all this, with all the championships and all the tournaments that we win in sevens, comes the individual accolades, and that's when he started to get noticed, and so the national selector saw him. In '91, he was invited to go to Hong Kong. He had to say no. This is back when guys had jobs during the day and then played rugby. Not anymore. Now nobody misses tournaments nowadays, Eagle trips, because they can't go to work, right? Because most all of them now play rugby for a living. They play at these academies like Serevi, or they play at the Tiger Academy in Ohio, or they play at Northeast. They play at some academy, and what they're doing is they're in the Army, and now the Army has the Army, Navy, and Air Force have this program called the World Class Athlete Program, and we played against the Army Selects this season in our territory, and they fly in from wherever they are. 3 of them live at the Olympic Training Center in San Diego, and their full-time job in the Army is playing rugby. And they're at the training center, and they're coached by national coaches, and it's hard to compete against clubs like that because our guys actually have jobs during the day, and we go out at Tuesday night at 9 o'clock at night. We practice 9 to 11 up at Oakland High School, and then we practice twice a week, and we play on Saturdays, right? Army, they practice 7 days a week, right? And they got coaches, and that's all they do. So it's kind of hard to compete now at the club level, and that's where the top clubs are now. The chasm between the top 4 is just immense now in national rugby. But so David was invited to go to Hong Kong in '91 to play with the Eagles, and David had this thing called a JOB, right? So they call you on the phone. David, can you go to Hong Kong? He's got to go to work and that's a week trip. That's day travel back and forth, 2 days, 5 days there. You got a week, so a lot of bosses are not forgiving like that. I mean, if you don't work for yourself and you're young in the 20s, and you go and say, "Can I take another week off?" and then pretty soon it's another week, and then because David went to Sicily in '91, and and I flew over and watched him play in Lisbon. He was with the Cougars when the Eagles traveled and played, not as the Eagles, they played as the Cougars. So he's taken a week, so he missed 2 weeks. That was a 2-week tour because it was Sicily and Lisbon. So he's got to keep going back to his boss, and I don't even know what his job was then. But most bosses are not very understanding when it comes to you missing work, especially on short notice. Oh, well, I'll see you in 2 weeks, right? Or I'll see you next month. And most of you don't keep any jobs like that. So unfortunately, David had to turn down a lot of trips that he was invited to. So he we did. So finally, the year after, he was able to play, and he went and played in Hong Kong for the Eagles in '92, and he was he played and he turned down trips to Fiji, turned down island trips for the Eagles tours because they call you on the phone and they say, "Can you go down the next week?" And sometimes, well, if you're in the pool, that you get the call, you got to be ready to move, right? And that's how it was back then. So it's just unfortunate. So, but he got the individual. He's got the caps, international caps in sevens, and he was able. And he's been playing step down. He played the last time for us, for Nova, in the National Clubs Championships in 2003. So that's a good run from 88 to 2003, playing competitive, and now he plays for the Virginia Cardinals, which I'm proud to be a member of, and a lot of people here are also part of that organization. So, and David still gets it done at his age. So, and we're very proud of him. He's probably except for the three brothers, right? Those three guys. He's probably our most notable and our most famous and awarded player as far as awards go, so, and accolades. So I'm not on the Hall of Fame board, so I don't actually do the induction, but it's been my pleasure to come down here and tell you about David, and plus, like I said, just a classy guy on and off, and you won't meet a nicer guy. No PEDs, right? No yellow. No, and same thing with Otis, right? No yellow cards or red cards that we know about, right? So, and
Tell us more about the three brothers.
in the law we call it opening the door. No, and once they open the door, so everything gets asked, and after that. So, but anyway, so it's my pleasure to introduce you. Oh, by the way, I didn't tell you what happened with his name. When he first came here, we had a guy on our team, Tony Brown. Claims he's an American, but he has an English accent. He went to school in England, and I don't know how he's an American. He was the athletic director at Vassar for many years. Is he still there?
Yeah.
Is he? Yeah. Okay, so anyway, to make a long story longer, there was a famous a soccer player in England, Dixie Dean, and so he became Dixie when he first got here, and he hasn't. I mean, I don't think he's ever really embraced the name, but he doesn't really have any choice, does he? Because you are what other people call you, right? Pretty much, whether you like it or not. So it's my pleasure to introduce you, David Dean. I'm sure you're going to come up here. Someone's going to say that he's going to get in some club today, isn't he? Come on, Dave. Thank you. I'm soaking wet. That's why I didn't want to get too close.